Budgeting usually feels like a financial diet that is completely impossible to stick to. You track every single penny, you feel guilty for dining out, and eventually you just give up. But the problem isn't you, it's the restrictive system itself. Today, I'm going to show you the 50-30-20 anti-budget that actually lets you spend money completely guilt-free. Stop living paycheck to paycheck and let's build a financial framework you will actually enjoy. To understand why the 50-30-20 rule is so revolutionary, we first have to deeply analyze why you and millions of other hardworking people have repeatedly failed at budgeting in the past. If you are like most people, your introduction to personal finance involved downloading a complex spreadsheet or a rigid financial tracking application. You were told by traditional financial gurus to categorize absolutely every single transaction. You had a category for coffee, a category for toothpaste, a category for gasoline, and a category for weekend entertainment. This method is mathematically sound on paper, but it is psychologically disastrous in reality. Traditional budgeting treats human beings like emotionless robots. It assumes that you have an infinite reserve of daily willpower to mathematically evaluate every single purchase you make. But human psychology simply does not work this way. In behavioral economics, there is a very real concept known as decision fatigue. When you force your brain to make hundreds of micro decisions about money every single week, debating whether a $4 coffee fits into your arbitrary spreadsheet category, your brain eventually burns out. Traditional budgeting is the exact financial equivalent of a severe crash diet. If you starve yourself of all sugar and all carbohydrates, you might lose weight for 2 weeks. But eventually, your biological survival instincts will take over, and you will find yourself eating an entire chocolate cake at midnight out of sheer frustration. The exact same psychological snap happens with money. You restrict yourself brutally for a month. You feel massive amounts of guilt for buying a simple lunch with a coworker, and then, out of sheer exhaustion, you abandon the spreadsheet completely. You go on a massive revenge spending spree, completely wiping out whatever progress you made. You do not fail at budgeting because you are lazy or bad at math. You fail because you are using a system designed for accountants, not for human beings living in a chaotic, modern world. You need a system that thrives on absolute simplicity, requires almost zero daily maintenance, and completely eliminates the toxic emotion of guilt from your financial life. This fundamental failure of traditional budgeting leads directly into the most dangerous financial epidemic of our generation: living paycheck to paycheck. Statistically, a massive percentage of high-income earners, people making well over 6 figures a year, are still trapped in this exact cycle. Why? Because living paycheck to paycheck is rarely an income problem. It is almost always an allocation problem. When you do not have a macro framework for your money, a concept known as Parkinson's Law takes absolute control of your life. Parkinson's Law dictates that expenses will always naturally rise to perfectly match your income. When your paycheck hits your bank account on the first of the month, you look at your massive balance and you feel a false sense of extreme wealth. Your brain sees a large number and immediately signals that it is safe to spend. You go to nice dinners, you buy premium clothes, you finance a new luxury car. But because you have no structural boundaries, you spend the first 2 weeks of the month living like royalty, and the last 2 weeks of the month living in a state of sheer financial terror. You begin checking your banking app every morning, sweating as the balance drops to double digits. You silently pray that your car does not break down or that you do not face an unexpected medical bill, because a single $500 emergency would completely destroy you. This cycle creates a permanent baseline of chronic stress. You are effectively holding your breath underwater for 2 weeks every single month, only coming up for air on payday. This stress bleeds into your career, your relationships, and your physical health. To break this terrifying cycle, we must destroy Parkinson's Law. We must build architectural walls inside your bank account so your money knows exactly where it belongs before you ever get the chance to look at it. Enter the 50-30-20 rule. Popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren in her book, All Your Worth, this is the ultimate anti-budget. It is a macro budgeting framework that completely ignores microtransactions. Instead of creating 50 different tiny categories for every minor aspect of your life, this rule forces you to divide your entire financial existence into exactly three unchangeable, overarching buckets. The philosophy states that absolutely every dollar of your after-tax income must be split according to this exact ratio. 50% goes strictly to your needs, 30% goes to your wants, and 20% goes to your savings, investing, and debt payoff. The absolute brilliance of this system lies in its brutal simplicity and its deep understanding of human psychology. By explicitly dedicating a massive 30% of your income entirely to things you simply want, you are structurally programming joy, entertainment, and pleasure into your financial life. You are not starving yourself. You're giving yourself legal mathematical permission to enjoy your money today. At the same time, by aggressively locking 20% away into savings and investments, you are mathematically guaranteeing that your net worth will grow every single month, regardless of what you do with the rest of your cash. You no longer have to worry about whether a $4 coffee is ruining your life, because as long as those three macro percentages are balanced, you literally cannot fail. Before we fill these buckets, we must clarify exactly what money we are dividing. Before you can successfully implement this system, you must understand the single biggest mathematical error people make when setting up the 50-30-20 rule. You absolutely cannot calculate these percentages based on your gross income. Gross income is a phantom number. It is a vanity metric. It is the impressive number your employer puts on your job offer letter and the number you tell your friends. But it is a number before the government brutally steps in. If you calculate your 50% survival baseline based on your gross income, you will instantly bankrupt yourself because you are budgeting with imaginary money that you will never actually possess. The 50-30-20 rule must be calculated strictly on your net income, your actual liquid take-home pay. This is the exact amount of money that physically drops into your checking account after federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and mandatory health insurance premiums have been completely stripped away. Let us look at the pure mathematics. If your gross salary is $5,000 a month, your actual net take-home pay might only be $3,800. This $3,800 is your true battlefield ammunition. Based on this net income, your 50% needs bucket is mathematically capped at $1,900. Your 30% wants bucket is exactly $1,140. And your 20% savings bucket is precisely $760. By basing your entire financial architecture on your true net income, you ground your lifestyle in absolute mathematical reality. You are no longer living on the illusion of your salary. You are living on the factual data of your actual cash flow. Now, let us define the absolute foundation of your life. The first and largest bucket is the 50% allocated to your needs. This category is your financial bedrock. It represents your absolute survival baseline. The defining question for this category is brutal but simple. If I lost my job tomorrow, what bills would I legally and biologically be forced to pay to stay alive, keep a roof over my head, and stay out of court? This bucket includes your housing, meaning your rent or your minimum mortgage payment. It includes your core utilities, electricity, water, heat, and basic internet access required for work. It includes your absolute baseline groceries, the raw, uncooked ingredients you buy at the supermarket to sustain your physical body. It includes essential transportation, your basic car payment, auto insurance, and the gasoline required to get you to your place of employment. Finally, it includes legally binding minimum debt payments, such as the absolute minimum payment on your student loans or credit cards, and your essential health insurance. The biggest mistake beginners make with the 50-30-20 rule is lying to themselves about what constitutes a need. High-speed gigabit internet for gaming is not a need. Basic internet is. A brand new luxury leased SUV with heated leather seats is not a need. Reliable transportation is. Ordering a $30 sushi meal through a delivery app is absolutely not a need. You must be utterly ruthless when categorizing your needs. If you inflate your lifestyle and allow luxury items to secretly masquerade as basic survival needs, your 50% bucket will instantly overflow, and the entire mathematical structure of the budget will violently collapse. We must now address the most common and terrifying reality of the modern economy. What happens when you sit down, calculate your net income, add up your absolute basic survival needs, and realize that your housing, food, and transport are consuming 60, 70, or even 80% of your income? This is a massive crisis, primarily driven by skyrocketing rent prices in major metropolitan areas. If your basic survival needs vastly exceed 50%, your budget is completely broken. You cannot simply ignore the math and hope for the best. If you are in this situation, you have exactly two mathematical levers you can pull. The first lever is drastically altering your physical environment and lowering fixed costs. You must ruthlessly audit your needs. You may have to make painful, temporary sacrifices. This might mean swallowing your pride, breaking a lease, and moving to a cheaper, less desirable neighborhood. It might mean selling your expensive financed car and buying a highly reliable, heavily depreciated used vehicle with pure cash. It might mean taking on roommates to instantly slash your housing and utility costs in half. The second lever is violently increasing your income. There is a fundamental limit to how much you can cut your expenses. You cannot mathematically budget your way out of absolute poverty. If you have slashed your expenses to the absolute bone and your needs still consume 70% of your income, you have a severe income crisis. You must aggressively pursue a higher-paying job, demand a raise, or build a secondary stream of income through aggressive freelancing or side hustles. While you are fixing this structural issue, you can temporarily implement an emergency pivot. You might temporarily shift to a 60-20-20 budget. You must temporarily sacrifice your wants, your lifestyle and entertainment, to accommodate your inflated survival costs. But notice what never changes: the 20% allocated to your future. Even in a housing emergency, you never ever stop saving, because stopping your investments is financial suicide. Now we move to the most revolutionary part of the anti-budget: the 30% allocated entirely to your wants. This is your lifestyle bucket. This is the exact category that makes the entire framework sustainable for the rest of your life. A want is defined as any expense that improves the quality of your life, but is not biologically or legally required for your immediate survival. This is where your daily artisan coffee goes. This is where your massive restaurant bills, your weekend bar tabs, and your food delivery apps belong. This bucket holds your premium streaming subscriptions, your expensive boutique gym memberships, your video games, your designer clothes, and your tropical vacations. When traditional, extreme financial advisors tell you to cut out your daily coffee, they are fundamentally misunderstanding human motivation. We do not go to work for 40 or 50 hours a week just to pay for electricity and basic bread. We work to experience life. We work for pleasure, for experiences, and for joy. If a financial system requires you to be miserable today in order to be rich tomorrow, it is a bad system. By aggressively allocating a full 30% of your income to pure, unadulterated lifestyle spending, you are programming joy into your math. If your net income is $4,000 a month, you have $1,200 mathematically approved for pure fun. You could spend $300 every single weekend on whatever brings you happiness and still be perfectly on track to become wealthy. This bucket is the ultimate cure for financial anxiety. The psychological power of this 30% bucket cannot be overstated. It facilitates a massive mental shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. A scarcity mindset is exactly what traditional budgeting forces upon you. It is a life driven entirely by fear and guilt. You look at every single dollar as a precious resource that is constantly slipping through your fingers. You view spending money on yourself as a moral failure. Every purchase comes with a heavy dose of buyer's remorse. But the 50-30-20 framework forcibly installs an abundance mindset by granting you permission to spend. When you swipe your credit card for a $100 steak dinner, you do not feel a single drop of panic. You do not check your bank account the next morning with regret. Why? Because that $100 was already budgeted for pleasure. The system expects you to spend it. You have built a playground inside a financial fortress. You can play freely inside the playground, but the absolute unbreakable rule is that you cannot jump the fence. When the 30% is completely gone for the month, the fun stops until the next paycheck. You cannot borrow from your rent money, and you absolutely cannot borrow from your savings. The 30% is a generous allowance, but it is a hard, impenetrable ceiling. The final bucket is the 20% allocated to your future self. This includes savings, investments, and aggressive debt reduction. While the 50% bucket keeps you alive today, and the 30% bucket keeps you happy today, this 20% bucket is the singular engine that will eventually buy your total financial freedom. This 20% is not optional. It is not an "if I have money left over" category. It is a mandatory, non-negotiable tax that you pay to your future self. It has a very specific hierarchy of execution. First, this money must be deployed to build a rock-solid starter emergency fund. You must aggressively channel this 20% into a high-yield savings account until you have at least $1,000 to $2,000 in pure liquid cash. Eventually, you want this to grow to cover 3 to 6 months of your 50% needs bucket. This emergency fund is your financial shock absorber. It guarantees that when your car engine explodes or a medical emergency arises, it is merely an inconvenience, not a life-destroying tragedy that forces you into credit card debt. Once your emergency fund is fully capitalized, this 20% is permanently redirected into investments. It flows into your employer-sponsored 401k, your Roth IRAs, and broad market index funds like the S&P 500. By rigidly enforcing this 20% rule, you are mathematically guaranteeing that you will become a millionaire over a standard working career, thanks to the undeniable power of compound interest. You are literally buying back your future time. But what if you are currently drowning in debt? One of the most frequent points of confusion regarding the 50-30-20 rule is exactly how to handle massive, toxic consumer debt. If you are carrying $20,000 in credit card debt, how does this fit into the 3 buckets? You must logically split the anatomy of the debt. The legally required absolute minimum monthly payment required to keep the bank from suing you or destroying your credit score is categorized strictly as a need. It belongs in your 50% survival bucket. It is a non-negotiable monthly utility, just like your electric bill. However, paying only the minimum balance on a high-interest credit card guarantees that you will be in debt for the next 3 decades, bleeding tens of thousands of dollars in compound interest to massive banking institutions. Therefore, you must use your 20% future bucket as an offensive weapon. Once your baseline emergency fund is established, every single spare dollar from your 20% category must be hurled aggressively at the principal balance of your highest interest debt. You are effectively pausing your stock market investments because no index fund on the planet can reliably outperform the negative 25% guaranteed loss of a revolving credit card balance. By categorizing the minimum payment as a baseline survival need and weaponizing your future wealth bucket. As an aggressive strike force against the principal, you build a mathematically flawless system for rapidly escaping the chains of modern debt. One of the main reasons people struggle to implement the 50-30-20 rule is that they do not realize they are secretly living in the past. They are victims of the credit card float. The credit card float is an invisible psychological trap. It happens when you pay off your credit card balance in full every single month, so you proudly tell yourself, "I have no debt." However, you are relying entirely on your next paycheck to pay off last month's expenses. You look at your checking account on the first of the month and you see $3,000. You feel wealthy. You think you have plenty of money to allocate to your wants bucket. But what you are ignoring is that $2,500 of that money is already spoken for. It is already mathematically promised to the credit card company to pay for the groceries and dinners you consumed 30 days ago. You are constantly one paycheck behind reality. If your paycheck were delayed by just 1 week, the entire illusion would shatter, you would miss the payment, and you would instantly be hit with massive interest fees. To actually execute the 50-30-20 rule, you must break the float. You must get to a point where the money paying for this month's expenses was actually earned last month. Breaking the float often requires 1 or 2 brutal months of spending absolutely nothing on your wants. redirecting every spare penny to completely zero out the credit card cycle. Once you break the float and your net income is truly yours, you must protect your plan by automating the entire system. Knowing the numbers is only half the battle. If you rely on your own human memory and daily willpower to manually move this money around every month, you will eventually fail. Human beings are inherently flawed, emotional, and prone to laziness. To make the 50-30-20 rule permanent, you must turn it into a relentless, unfeeling machine. You must automate the execution using the multi-account strategy. Stop keeping all your money in one massive checking account. When all your money sits in one pile, your brain cannot differentiate between rent money and vacation money. You need three distinct, separate digital containers. Account number one is your needs checking account. This is the command center. Your paycheck is directly deposited here. All of your fixed bills, rent, car payment, utilities, are set to auto-pay strictly from this account. You never carry the debit card for this account in your wallet. It exists solely to keep you alive. Account number two is your wants checking account. This is your fun money. You set up an automatic transfer from your main account so that exactly 30% of your income flows into this account the exact morning you get paid. You carry this debit card with you. When this account hits zero, your card will decline and your fun is over, but your other money remains safe. Account number three is your savings and wealth account. This should ideally be at a completely different, external bank to create maximum friction. The exact second you get paid, an automated transfer rips 20% of your income away from you and locks it in this external account. You do not even see it happen. By building this automated plumbing system, the budget governs itself. One of the most profound hidden benefits of the 50-30-20 rule is that it serves as an impenetrable mathematical shield against the deadliest financial disease in the modern world. Lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep occurs when your expenses automatically rise to meet your new income. When average people get a 20% raise, society tells them to go finance a new car and upgrade their apartment. Suddenly, that entire raise is completely absorbed by new monthly liabilities, and despite earning significantly more money, they are still living perfectly paycheck to paycheck. The 50-30-20 framework completely neutralizes this threat through the power of percentages. Because the system is anchored to ratios rather than fixed dollar amounts, it organically scales your wealth exactly in proportion to your success. Imagine your take-home pay doubles over the next 5 years. If you strictly adhere to the rule, the raw dollar amount of your 50% needs bucket doubles. You can safely afford to move into a beautiful home without stress. Your 30% wants bucket doubles, meaning you can travel the world guilt-free, but most importantly, the massive raw dollar amount of your 20% savings bucket perfectly doubles as well. Without any extra mathematical effort, your investment contributions skyrocket. The system guarantees that for every single dollar of extra luxury you inject into your lifestyle, an equivalent mathematically proportionate dollar is forcefully injected into your net worth. You cannot simply snap your fingers and magically exist in a perfect 50-30-20 utopia tomorrow. If you have been living paycheck to paycheck in absolute financial chaos for years, you are currently blind. You do not actually know where your money is going. To successfully transition into this anti-budget, you must endure what I call the 90-day financial audit. You must sit down, log into your banking application, and pull the complete, unedited transaction history for the last 3 months. You must face the brutal, uncomfortable reality of your own behavior. Highlight every single non-negotiable survival expense. Highlight every single fun purchase and restaurant bill. When most people do this for the first time, the visual result is absolutely terrifying. They discover their basic needs are consuming 40%. Their wealth building is at 0%, and a staggering 60% of their massive income is bleeding out through the convenience economy, food delivery apps, and impulsive online shopping. This audit is not meant to shame you, it is a diagnostic tool. Once you see the raw data, the fat becomes incredibly obvious to trim. You will easily find hundreds of dollars in forgotten subscriptions, overlapping streaming services, and ridiculous convenience fees that you can instantly eliminate without actually decreasing your true quality of life. You spend the next 90 days actively restructuring your life to fit the percentages. It requires intense discipline for 3 months to buy yourself decades of absolute peace. Living paycheck to paycheck is not a life sentence. It is simply the default result of operating without a structured financial framework. The modern economy is a highly optimized machine designed to extract every single dollar from your pocket through relentless subscriptions, aggressive marketing, and the frictionless ease of digital spending. If you do not have a robust, automated defense system, the economy will gladly consume you. The 50-30-20 rule is your declaration of financial independence. It is the ultimate tool to take back control of your labor, your time, and your future. It forces you to build an unbreakable foundation with your needs. It protects your mental health and your joy by mathematically guaranteeing your wants. And most importantly, it weaponizes 20% of your income to violently attack debt and build permanent, generational wealth. Budgeting does not have to be a miserable, restrictive spreadsheet that makes you feel guilty for being human. It is simply about giving your money a high-level job, automating the process, and getting out of your own way. Stop letting the first of the month dictate your happiness. Stop working endlessly for money and force a system where your money works tirelessly for you. Implement the 50-30-20 rule today, completely automate your accounts, and watch as the stress of survival transforms into the absolute peace of true financial freedom. Thank you for watching.